My guest today is Sadie Nardini. Sadie is a musician, world-renowned yogini, and an author. Her website description says she is a full-spectrum transformation advocate, a renowned empowerment speaker, yoga and anatomy expert, and healthy hedonism lifestyle leader. We'll ask her about that later. Whatever works to shift you from suffering to passion and fit, fantastic freedom, she finds it and helps you apply it in your busy life. I'm so thrilled that she'll be leading the Warrior Within weekend at Sedona Mago Retreat, October 16th through the 18th. Welcome, Sadie.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. I kind of want to grab that description you just said and put it on everything I do.
It's pretty wonderful, isn't it? And I like the healthy hedonism. It sounds a little bit rebellious and feisty, so it sounds a lot of fun.
Kind of like me. I like to find that balance, and I try to strike it every day.
That's good. So, Sadie, is there a certain kind of yoga that you practice, or is it a combination of different types?
You know, I have my own style of yoga that I created about 8 to 10 years ago after studying with a lot of the anatomy masters, particularly Leslie Kaminoff, who's a really world-renowned yoga educator and breath educator and anatomist. So after I learned a lot about how the body works and doesn't work so much, I saw that there were some discrepancies with a lot of the types of yoga I learned and how I was teaching students. So I targeted the areas, as I do in every aspect of life for people, I targeted the areas that weren't working so well, and I'm on a mission to re-educate people about how they can empower their yoga practice on the mat just as much as other things off the mat. I named it Core Strength Vinyasa Yoga. It's an everything and nothing name. I mean, it means a lot of things, and to me it just draws people in, like core strength, what's that? We barely talk about the abs in my style. It's a whole body core strength, and vinyasa means to flow or to sequence together in a fluid movement, which is actually how the body works really well. Doesn't love to freeze in space so much. And then, of course, yoga, so uniting with yourself and bringing yourself back into harmony, whatever that means to you. So all of that together is my style. So that's what I'll be doing during the whole weekend.
Oh, that sounds quite beautiful. So what can people expect to come away with after they spend the weekend with you in the Warrior Within weekend retreat at Sedona Mago Retreat?
Well, so many things is my hope. And, you know, I do present all over the world and the country as well. And every time we spend a weekend together, people come away transformed, not just on a body or a physical level. We will be getting into how to optimize and move and dance and set their spirit free, as well as harmonize their anatomy knowledge in any style of yoga they do now. So I'm not going to take away their style. I'm just going to turbo boost it.
Oh, I like that. That sounds fun.
Yeah, we have teachers of all different levels and styles, all different abilities and students, beginners and up. Any age is welcome because it's very adaptable for the body that you have and the place where you are in your yoga practice. Also, we do a lot about how you optimize and transform your heart, your spirit, your emotional state, your relationships, and just clearing your own path toward the direction you really want to go instead of getting stuck in the doubts and the fears or what other people think you should be doing. We get really clear about what's best for you and how you can do that within the arrangements that you've already made in your life.
Oh, that's really interesting. So do you actually have discussions with people?
Yes, always. So I'm never only about moving the body. Even if it is primarily an asana session, we're going to have a conversation in the beginning together, at least for a half an hour, about the philosophy, about what we're doing and why we're choosing to move differently. And that also parallels, of course, off the mat as well. So why we're choosing to either stay stuck or how we break through old patterns, old restrictions that aren't really serving us and disempowering us. Just the same in a triangle pose as it would be in your career or your money situation or a relationship.
Oh, that's great. And when you talk about dance, is it free-form dance, or do you teach routines, or are they pretty much free to move to the music?
Well, both. I mean, I do have some guided movement, and I'm always kind of coming in and out of that guidance and then opening space for people to move individually within that structure. And then sometimes it goes into a free-for-all as we play some awesome jam and just let people dance with spirit, which is what I think yoga is truly about. And sometimes I don't even find the joy and that energetic movement and pure self-expression in a yoga asana as I can if I'm just allowing energy to move me and not thinking so much about the structured alignment. So we do a bit of both.
Yeah, dancing with spirit. That's such a beautiful, beautiful concept. I know that when you were younger, you suffered from some type of serious physical problem, and you overcame it partly through yoga. Could you tell that story?
Oh, sure. It's literally the story of my life because it lasted for so long. When I was a teenager, just a young girl, 13, I was in a swimming pool in Iowa City, Iowa. I had a grown man jump on my head, like cannonball onto my head, and I weighed about 80 pounds. So it knocked me out. They had to pull me out of the pool. And when I woke up, I didn't exactly remember what happened. So I went home, didn't really remember it, just another day at the pool, but I was starting to feel strange and dizzy. And a couple of weeks later in school, I had a weird seizure and I couldn't walk very well anymore. And they had to keep me in the chair I was in science class and just slide me down the whole hallways of the school to the nurse. I went to the hospital. They had no idea what was wrong with me. They did tell me I had stage 4 leukemia at one point, but it turned out after 2 weeks they told us that was a lab error.
Oh, my gosh.
So I didn't know that for a couple of weeks, and that was intense, but luckily I didn't have that. But I did have something very wrong with me, and over the next 2 years, my body just ceased to function properly. So it was very partially paralyzed all over my body.
Did you say over the next 2 years?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, I progressively just kind of went more and more offline. I would have panic attacks all day long. I would see spots in front of my head. I couldn't breathe properly or stand up very well or move. I was just dizzy all the time, headaches, migraines. So I wasn't really a functioning teenager. And the doctors had said, for lack of a better diagnosis, they said maybe it was spinal meningitis that went untreated because I didn't remember the injury.
Right.
So they were really mystified. Moving forward, it took me about 10 years after my mom pulled this dusty old yoga book off the shelf in desperation, wanting to help me feel better, not knowing what to do, but she did have that yoga practice, and it was from the 60s, and it was very gentle and breath mindful, and the woman on the cover was wearing horrible fashion. She had some flesh-colored unitard on, which may explain my love for unitards this day and age. It was something that was very therapeutic for me. I couldn't do any of the yoga that I'm doing today at all. No way. Not a lunge, not a warrior pose. Just lie down on the ground and breathe for an hour. Or put myself in legs up the wall or goddess. Knowing now what actually happened, which was that my whole cervical down to my mid-thoracic spine got dislocated and started pressing on my spinal cord. So when your bones get dislocated like a shoulder, the doctor can usually just put it back in, but they did not take any spinal x-rays. They didn't know what to look for. So no one ever knew that my spine was out so badly that it was compromising my entire central nervous system to the point where 20 years later, this was about a year ago is all, I went to a chiropractor and they took x-rays of my neck for the first time. And when I saw them, I started crying because I know anatomy.
Yeah.
And I knew that wasn't right.
Right.
And also I was so relieved because I'd started hearing about spinal subluxation is what it's called, an atlas subluxation. And a lot of people have it and don't know, and they have all these random symptoms and horrible headaches and fatigue and tingling and nerve problems and on, but they don't know they could go to a good chiropractor and actually start to get it put back into place. So it wasn't until a year ago that I actually got it fixed. Until then, I was just relying on yoga and doing my best with a body that didn't seem to work right, ever.
You got it fixed last year, surgically?
No, I went to a chiropractor, a very good chiropractor, and he x-rayed it, managed to find the subluxation, and put it back into place. And the first day, the hour after that adjustment, I felt like a normal person for the first time in 20 years.
How amazing.
Because my musculature is built around it as a dislocation, it's going to take some time. So I go back every week.
Oh, good.
Every week, see where it's at, get an adjustment if I need to. And my body is slowly rebuilding itself into a new shape.
Oh, how wonderful. So if you've just joined us, we're listening to my guest, Sadie Nardini, who is a musician, world-renowned yogini, and an author. And this is KTMS 990, the Young at Heart radio show. So Sadie, you are very multi-talented. I know you are also a musician and a singer-songwriter. Can you tell us about your endeavors in that field?
Well, this is something that I'm really pleased to announce, that I have gone to Los Angeles in the last couple of months and recorded an entire music album with an amazing band called The Kin, two Australian brothers, and a producer, Johnny Wood. And all of these guys are just so talented, so deep in their work, and they've been doing it for decades. And here I come, always feeling like a musician in the yoga world. Although I love the yoga, I've always felt like a musician at heart. That's my archetype. Instead of a yoga person trying to sing, people have always seen me that way as well. The rock star of yoga, or rock who you are, and all these things. And that didn't come from me saying that. That came from people seeing me as that. And I was invited to go to LA and to create my own music album, co-writing and lead vocals on this entire project, and it just sounds incredible. So it's coming out in a couple of months, and I couldn't feel more whole or fulfilled after walking through the fire of the terror facing that project.
Well, I'm really excited for you, because I do believe there's nothing more fulfilling or exciting than being in the midst of a creative project like the one you're describing.
I agree. I've always thought the thing or things outside of me in my life that could feel that way. And my teaching led me to understand over the course of 20 years that it's never found outside. So although it looks like I'm doing a thing that made me really happy, the fact is, in reality, I'm being the thing I'm meant to be. And that's where the true satisfaction is coming from. So because I said yes to becoming that which I already am deep inside, that musician nature, a satisfaction has arisen. So I hope people love it. But even if no one ever listens to it or likes it, I'm perfectly as satisfied as I would be before, because I created and I was able to spend time being that artist that I truly am.
That's so beautifully said. And I think that, God bless us, we tend to pigeonhole people. You know, it's very confusing. Like, well, I thought you were a yoga person. Oh, you're a singer. Like, as if we don't have multi-talents and can't do many things. So
that's it. I was speaking to a really big yoga philosopher the other day, and he's in all the Yoga Journal magazines, and just a really, I don't know if he'd want me to mention, but he's a very big teacher, and he's very, very convinced that we have multiple Dharma paths in our lifetimes, and that the Dharma path can change. So the path that you are on right now that is truly you, you may add another layer to that, or you may subtract a layer.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I think sometimes it's only when you get older that you look back and you see how all these different paths that you took all came together ultimately to create the next path, or who you really are.
And I mean, really getting us closer to who we are truly by everything that we attempt. And the things that don't work out hopefully lead us closer to who we're not. And then we realize who we are more, and we go that way. I was just talking to a girlfriend today who feels like she's wasted the last 5 years of her life because she was in a relationship that was abusive. And I said, you know, this is an angel that came into your life, really, to show you who you're not and to try to kick you onto your path. The 5-year part maybe is because you're stubborn and you didn't listen.
Yeah, I understand. And, you know, Abraham Hicks' group always says that it's really good when you know what you don't want, because then you can figure out what you do want. So we're not going to get to hear your voice yet today, but people need to follow you on Facebook. Please. How would they find that?
So you want to follow me on my page, which I love. It's got so much free stuff and inspiration and things also for yoga, and the music will be there. It's facebook.com/Sadie Yoga. So it's that / thing, Sadie Yoga, or you can just search for Sadie Yoga. And what will come up is Sadie Nardini's Core Strength Vinyasa Yoga, the big long one. That's what you want.
Okay.
My name, Sadie Nardini, just goes to my other page. I can't deal with too. So.
SadieNardini.com. And it's spelled pretty much the way it sounds, SadieNardini.com. Is that Italian?
It is. It's so Italian.
Can you describe your voice? Because I'm just not going to get to hear it, and I want to know.
Well, it's been described as a cross between a little girl singing intimately and Joan of Arc calling in the desert wilds.
Wow. Well, we're going to definitely have to follow that to hear that for ourselves, but that's a very interesting description. Before we leave, I want to remind our listeners that you're going to be leading the Warrior Within weekend at Sedona Mago Retreat in Sedona, Arizona, October 16th through the 18th, and you can still register for that at the Sedona Mago Retreat website. Go to Sedona Mago, M-A-G-O, retreat.org, and then you can go to retreats and find Sadie Nardini's Warrior Within Weekend and register for it. So I hope that some of our listeners will decide to come to Sedona for this wonderful weekend.
Me too. It's going to be a blast.
And I've sure enjoyed talking to you, Sadie. Thanks so much for being my guest today.
You're so welcome. It was a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.